Okay. Wait, someone just joined.
So Jazz, hello, officially hello for this
Hi.
discussion. It's so nice to have you here. I love that we met over the internet, like, true modern friendship. And we've, gone back and forth and kind of bonded over motherhood. That's what we have in common. And I'm thrilled to have you here today to talk about parenting through the ages. So I will leave you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do and about your lovely daughter. And then we can get stuck straight into what it means to parent children at different stages, because you and I are at different stages of that journey. Right. So let us know who you are.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. And yes, I'm so glad we met through the interwebs. My name is Jazz Smollet, and I am a chef, designer, interior designer, and I host a show called Living by Design, where we transform people's spaces and then cook them a lovely meal at the end to celebrate. I am also an interior designer in real life. And a home cook, chef, everything like that. Did a cookbook, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I am most importantly a mom to my lovely 7.5-year-old daughter. I don't want to let go of the 7.5 because she's going to be 8 in July. So really, I should be saying almost 8-year-old, but I can't believe that time flies. And yeah, she is just magical and inquisitive and curious about everything, and keeping up with her, the things that she loves to do is so important to me, because she loves to do a million things. And it's like, wait, she likes to stack all of these plastic cups into the largest tower that's taller than her. She's an engineer. Oh my gosh, I've got to nurture that. So
yeah, so advanced. Oh, Jazz, you froze for a minute.
Just for a second. Sorry.
You're back. You're back.
I'm back. But yeah, she has like 40 different things that she wants to be when she grows up. Everything is from the arts to sciences and engineering to being a doctor or a veterinarian. Like she said to me the other day that, how do people work at banks? Do they have to be there all day? And I said, usually their shift is probably, 8 hours, probably all day. She said, I can't work at a bank because I have too many other jobs I want to do, and I'd have to stay there. She already has started her lemonade stand business. I'm trying to use that to teach her all the things about being an entrepreneur and like leading that. And,
I was going to say, does she get that entrepreneurial spirit from you, from seeing you have kind of a multifaceted career?
I think, yeah. And I can't take all the credit. I have to say briefly, I am co-parenting, and her dad is also an entrepreneur. But yes, I think as a little girl and me as her mom, I think she definitely gets the impression that she can do all the things. And the work that I do is my entrepreneurship. I am the parent that does all the things. I definitely, we're both entrepreneurs, but I have 12 different jobs, because I've always loved, a multifaceted career. So being able to dabble in all the different things that kind of relate to each other. And I tell her all the time, you can, because I'm pretty prepared that someone's going to tell her at school or somewhere, you can't be all those things. And I'm able to show her, well, actually, yeah, you can. And they don't necessarily have to happen all at once. I have several past careers. I have present ones that, I'm not actively working on a project for that particular career, but I just finished a project in that career a couple months ago, and now I'm on to my interior design project. Like, it's just, nowadays you can make whatever it is in your life that you want it to be, particularly with career, and there is no need to like choose one. So I do feel like I show her that. And then I do say to her all the time, you can be all those things. Like, mommy has 12 different careers. I don't know if it's exactly 12, but it's something like that.
And what a great thing for her to see, because I think, even when I was growing up, I was kind of saw more of a traditional career path around me, or represented. So this kind of, stay in the same job for a good amount of time, so it looks good on your resume. And, kind of getting into early adulthood, it seemed as though a multifaceted career was a liability. But in fact, it has served me so well. And I see it serving a lot of other people well, especially in today's climate. So I would love to ask you and this is tricky. When I think of somebody asking me this question, it's hard to answer. What stage, she's 7.5, what stage have you found to be the most challenging?
So far, I mean,
Yeah.
I feel so like I'm not allowed to speak on that because I don't have a teenager yet. And like, I know all the moms with teenagers are probably like, whatever, like you have no right to say what was happening.
Yeah.
But the most challenging for me, because sleep, like literally, I feel like during the day, I really don't have a ton of behavioral, quote unquote, issues with her. She's always been able to be, when she was a toddler, she could be distracted. So if we were in the grocery store and she started to have a fit about something, it's like, wait, is that a giraffe over there? Oh, wait, what? And then you can distract her and trick her into, now that doesn't work so much. But so the most difficult, well, okay, I'll have to say the most difficult stage was infancy, I guess, because I, as a new mom, hadn't softened into myself, giving myself the okay and the space to not do it perfectly. So because that was the most challenging part, is what I would fight myself on. So like, it's more so the stages of motherhood that have their challenges, I feel, than the stages of her raising her. It's more like, oh, at this stage, I was really trying to act like I was going to do it all. And I was going to do it all perfectly. And I was not going to ask for extra help. And I was going to, do all these things that I thought my mom had done, as my mom was a stay-at-home mom. But I was also going to have my career. And that not only was it not probably the ideal thing, the way, my mom didn't have a lot of help. She and my dad did not have a lot of help, but I don't think they would have preferred to not have a lot of help. I think that was by necessity, they lived away from their families. It wasn't because that's the way it's supposed to be. Like, we grow up, we're in communities. It's important to have community. And if you don't have one, to create one. And I had to learn that I can lean on the people who are part of my village. Without, feeling badly about it, or, anything like that. So the most difficult stage would have been infancy. But it was also such a lovely stage. But it was definitely challenging in that aspect. Now it has different challenges. So there's these new challenges, and the reason infancy was, I think we've talked about this, I'm not sure. I did have postpartum anxiety. So, and I've never talked a lot about it because I used to feel bad about it. Like it was definitely something that, like, it didn't look like how I thought it was supposed to look. the postpartum issues. I thought you were supposed to not want to be around the baby, and that wasn't my experience. My experience was I wanted to be around her all the time. I was obsessed with not letting something happen to her, you know, worried about that, like anxious about that and stuff. And so I worked through all of that and got help, like all that type of stuff, and then had my support system. And I have to say also, when I stopped nursing, some of that alleviated, because it was also our hormonal thing. It was a chemical thing. It was all of these things going on. And so that stage, when I look back, would have been, I guess, the most challenging, but it was also such a throwing me into the water of learning how to have to self-care. We hear about self-care all the time now, but in 2014, when she was born, we were kind of just at the precipice of starting to really talk about self-care as it relates to motherhood and the importance of it. And so now when we talk about parenting through the ages, and feel free to stop me if you have other questions, because I know I'm going on and on, but when we talk about parenting through the ages, I think it's really about several things. One being the relationship, that it's about the relationship. And I'll touch on that in a second. But first, also, well, not necessarily first, but also, I like to think about, she's my daughter. So when I've ever in the past like been hard on myself as a mom and being like, okay, well, did I say the right thing? Because oftentimes when we get in our heads, we're disconnecting from that relationship with our child, because we're in our head like, did I say the right thing? Oh my gosh, I shouldn't have said that. Or, oh man, I forgot to do this. Or, you know, whatever it is we're in our heads about where motherhood is concerned. Meanwhile, they're still there. Like they're still trying to get our attention about something. They're still trying, or we have that mom guilt or whatever's going on, the tape that we're playing about motherhood, being hard on ourselves. It's like to be able to step back and be like, I love my daughter. What would I want for her when she's my age and she has a daughter? And how would I want her to feel about herself? So let me talk to myself. How I would hope that she can feel about herself when she's an adult woman with a child. And that's one thing. But then as far as parenting through the ages, it's really like about relationship. And now is a challenging time because she's almost 8 years old. And so I'm like, wait, there's so many things I need to talk to her about. And I've started these processes, but like as a little girl who's not going to stay 8, I'm raising her to 25, 40, you know, to be out in the world as a young woman. And navigate and all the things that in our society and in our world, women have to navigate and women of color have to navigate. Like, and how do I not place those things? I paused because it froze, so sorry. Like, how do I discuss things with her without placing anything, you know, without making her feel less than? So how do I give her this information while letting her know that, you know, information that's happening in the world and things she needs to know as a growing girl and all these things? And how do I meet her where she is so that I'm not overloading her, but also so that I'm empowering her, if that makes sense. And I know I just ran the gamut, but as we know, there's so much.
There's so much. There are a few things that you said that I just truly loved. First of all, that it's not about so much the child, you know, there's hard stages of childhood. It's the evolving stages of motherhood. And I think that, gosh, isn't that true? Because we think about raising our children and witnessing them grow, but becoming a mother has shaped me just as much as I'm shaping my children. And so it's this reciprocal relationship where you're both kind of molding each other. And the other thing, you know, you talking about having a daughter, and there's something about, you know, I had a little boy and I love him just as much, but there's a different relationship with your daughter, in that I too think, how would I want her to be? Obviously, I want to be a good role model for my son so that but I think about more of that in terms of, well, how does he see my partner treating me so that he knows how to treat women? With my daughter, I tend to think, how does she see me treating myself? Because that is how she is going to grow into her own self-expectation. And sometimes I think like, oh, I'm running around, I never sit down, always doing something. And I'm like, God, I am literally teaching her by way of behavior that it is not okay to ever sit down and just not do the washing or something. And it's something about having definitely about children, but particularly about a daughter, that really exposes how you treat yourself.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that even that, like wanting to, that it's not like black or white. It's not like, okay, I'm teaching her this and I'm like the open conversation, like the relationship is still there, so that it's like, oh, I like being vulnerable in the way that they can handle. And I'm only using this as an example because you just mentioned it about always running, because I too am always running, so that I've started trying to say to her, because at a point she'd be like, Mommy, I don't like rushing. And I'm like, I'm sorry, we're rushing. Like, we got late, whatever. Like, I'm trying to breathe, or showing her, okay, I need to take a break. I'm going to step away from this situation right now. I'm going to go breathe. And just showing her how I do that, or showing her saying, I'm working on trying to slow down. It's important to relax also, and letting her in on that process so that we also don't have to feel like, oh my gosh, I didn't show her yet that it's important to relax. Gosh, well, there's still like, she can know that that you're a work in progress, or like, and I'm trying to be more like that with Nyla, like where it's like, look, I'm not always going to get it right. I'm sorry that I said we could do that, and then I had to change it based on new information. And you can feel sad about it and everything, and I understand. And I'm not always going to say the perfect thing. I'm not always going to have the right answers. But I'm trying to, make the best possible outcome, the best possible situation for everyone involved. And because the way that, like you say, the way we talk to ourselves is how they'll learn to talk to themselves. So that if we can, explain and forgive and ourselves and be vulnerable in the way they can handle. Like, obviously, we're not going to be like, oh my God, I can't even figure out, like with an 8-year-old or whatever, or, a 7-month-old, 9-month, I forget, I think you said 7 months.
7.
But at their level, like, how can we, again, it's the relationship. Like, how can we be vulnerable on their level so that they know it's okay to be that? Like, we're not perfect, and therefore they don't have to be perfect. And it's like I'm learning recently how to meet her where she is, so that it changes. You start to notice changes where you're like, oh, I can't talk like that anymore. I can't do that like baby talk anymore. It offends her. It's like, I think it was last year, and she said something. I said, oh, that's so sweet. Or I said something in a way that she could kind of tell, when you're like really busy as a mom, and you're kind of trying to act like you're paying attention, and you're like, oh, it's so cute. Oh my gosh, that's the most amazing thing. She's like, Mommy, I don't like, yeah, it's something I had said. And she said, Mommy, I don't like when you talk to me like that. That's like a baby. It's like I'm a baby. And she was like 6.5. And I was like, oh.
You are a baby.
Yeah, like, first of all,
I'm
not ready to accept that you're not a baby. And secondly, but it was like a bit of an epiphany for me, because I was like, oh, she's past that stage. Like, she's past the stage where I can speak like that or make that joke. I think it was like a baby joke I made or something. And she wants to be seen. And so I gotta like not relearn her, but like add some new, like she's growing. And so the relationship is growing and evolving. Like any relationship, it's growing and evolving. And I have to keep meeting her where she's at and learning her as she's learning me, because they get more and more information. 5 years ago, she couldn't understand, I don't always get it right. And I'm trying this and that. That wasn't something, and maybe I would say that to plant the seed, but it wasn't something she could understand in the way that she can understand now. So it's like evolving it as they grow and like just meeting where they are, trying to stay present. So then it always goes back to the relationship and it always goes back to being present. Like every relationship shifts. I mean, my relationship with my mom has changed and continues to change. The older she gets, the older I get, the older my daughter gets,
Yeah. I think that's such I've never actually thought about it in that way, where instead of focusing on their behavior or your behavior, putting your energy into the actual relationship between you two. And of course you kind of inherently do that, just purely by way of loving your child, but focusing less on like, you're doing this wrong or I'm doing this wrong, and really looking at, okay, well, this is happening, but how can I put my energy into how I'm going to relate to you about it?
Yeah. And I think it's because we grew up in the time that we grew up, it was more about, you wanted to raise a good kid, or like a good member of society, and a kid who stood up for themselves. And it was all this, it was a lot of action based. And you wanted to love them. I mean, I'm not trying to take anything away from our parents and the generation before us, anything like that. But as evolution happens, as we evolve emotionally, mentally, and we understand self-care and mental health and all of these things, I think that we've come to understand that the relationship and being able to, that will go a lot further than worrying about the rules. And it's the same thing in, like I found in my spiritual walk, my relationship with God, as opposed to following rules, is like way more effective and meaningful, and touches me in a deeper place and raises me up and aids in my growth more than a set of like rules.
Discipline. Yeah. Does anybody else want to jump in and contribute? Rebecca, I'm curious. Have you ever,
Hi.
Have you ever thought about it this way in terms of like,
I literally just missed what you said. I'm sorry. I think this is my internet connection. Like my cable provider is tripping out.
I was just saying, I'd love to hear
like
what
in and out. Yeah, go ahead.
Rebecca has to say about, as I think going back to kind of raising boys, like I feel like with Ra a lot, I'm like, it is more, I mean, look, Riley is like this big, so I'm not having to discipline her yet, but oh my God, boys. I feel like a lot of the time we're just like trying to rein it in with the tantrums, or like he's like bouncing off the walls, like body slamming, the furniture. And a lot of the time I find myself just being like, don't do that. Don't do that. Rebecca, what's your experience?
I say don't do that like every 5 seconds. Jazz, my son is 12. My daughter just turned 8. And I think our daughters are probably like soulmates, and we just don't know it yet. She's the same as you. She's like a total go-getter. She made like hundreds of dollars off of a lemonade stand last summer. She's like doing the same thing. She's literally doing a painting project like 3 inches behind my computer right now while we're doing this.
Yeah, mine's.
But I found it, like, my kids are 4 years apart, so the same as you, Amy. And my relationship with Finn, when he was a baby and I was a new mom, I was like learning with him how to be a parent, and he was real crazy too, bouncing off the walls. And it was like a constant, like making sure he didn't get a concussion every single day. And then when Dottie came, girls, or her personality is so much different than his. And she wasn't quite as physical, but like mentally, the volleying I would do with her is such a different way. So it was like everything I thought I knew about parenting was gone. I mean, aside from the essentials of taking care of them. So then it was a whole nother process of relearning how to mother this kid that's like a totally different type of person. And it's made me question who I am and like how I process things. So while I do like bring my vulnerability down to their level, I find myself as they get older able to like be more open in my vulnerability. Like you were saying, Jazz, like to show you're crying or like you're frustrated or upset. And now that Finn is 12 and he's a total teenager and like throwing all this attitude at me, and Dottie's like sort of mentally there with him a little bit because she's just so smart. And then I'm able to show like a truer side of myself that I find really comforting. But then it's hard because you don't want your kids to see, you know, you want to be strong all the time, which I think they think I am, but like to show that vulnerability, especially in the past 2 years, I think has been a revelation for all of us. But yeah, it's weird to switch your parenting brain back and forth in different ways with different kids. And as they get older, like you said, your daughter saying, no, don't talk to me like a baby anymore. You're like, but you're a baby. You're only 6. Like, actually, this is totally the appropriate way to talk to you. But that they are trying to reach you and you're trying to reach them, and to like find that middle ground where you're on the same level is like a day by day thing.
I got my first I hate you the other day. And it was so shocking to me because in terms of like circling back to parenting through the ages, I never said that to we weren't just not in a household where that was said. Like I didn't say that and I asked my mum, I was like, did I ever say that to you? I come from a family of 5. And she was like, no, none of you did. And then I asked my dad, he was like, I'm pretty sure all of you said that to me. So anyway, maybe it's a mum thing, but I was so horrified. And my partner and I, we don't say that to each other. Like we definitely have very heated arguments, but never around the kids. And so I was just like, I was so furious with him. And I was just like, that is disgusting behavior. Like I really let rip. And then afterwards, when we kind of all calmed down, I was like, where did you hear that? I was just like, how do you even know what that word means? And he was like, so upset, like didn't obviously know the impact or what it meant. He was like, I don't know. And then I felt bad because I was like, he obviously doesn't know. But it was so important for me to be like, you cannot, it might just be words, but words can be so hurtful. And that's like a huge thing with me. Like you cannot ever say that to your mother or anybody in your family but it was such a shock because he's 4. And I was like, I thought I was going to, have at least till like 13. And I got this, I hate you.
No, I hear you. And I hear the shock and all of that. Cause like Nyla, when she was around that age, would say like she had said something, I don't remember. And I was like shocked. And I was like, and I did. And it was like, you do not say that to your, like I was that, but because it's like, yeah, like it more so is again like a thing of like, I feel like it's okay for them to know that they hurt your feelings, like that they do.
I agree.
You can't say.
I was so mad. Mad.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I always tell my kids, like when they say something like that to me, like it's okay that you're mad at me and it's okay that you don't like me right now for whatever reason. But when you say words like that to me, you really are hurting me, and you need to understand that, like, feel your feelings and do that, please. But be gentle with how you're gonna like react with those feelings to me. And of course, they're 5, like they don't know how to control those feelings. So they're practicing all of the bullshit on you.
like we're just planting the seeds right now of like words have meaning and you can't take them back. And, you know, so you don't want to say things, one, that you don't mean. You got to like check that you actually mean something before you say it like that, because you don't actually hate your mom. But it's like, when they
And it
just
wasn't like, I know he doesn't hate me. It was just like, oh my God, like, wow, okay, we're doing this right now.
Yeah. And I
Anyway.
feel like kids now are so smart. Like they are born at 13. Like they're not, when they're born, they're basically 13 years old. Like they're not like, they're so smart. Like they put all these things together and they're emotionally and mentally smarter than their animal brain can handle. So, but because they're still, their frontal lobe is obviously long before being developed. And so they're still reacting off of that impulse or that animal brain, but they're also really smart. So it's like confusing. It's like, for us, it's like, wait, but you're really smart. Like you actually know, but no, you actually don't. You're still, 3 or 4 or 8, 12.
Do you remember your parents or your mother saying to you, wait till you have kids, then you'll understand? Now I say that to myself, like in my brain. They're not old enough to like understand what that means yet. But now I'm like, oh God, talk about retribution.
Amy, I think I've told you this before. I call my mom like multiple times a week and apologize for like whatever. Like, I'm sorry I was ever 12. I'm sorry I ever talked back. I'm sorry I ever fought with my sisters. And she just like laughs at me all the time. But it is such a true thing.
Right. I think what I realized was, because people, like friends used to always say to me, oh, you're like a second mom. You're like a second mom. Like I have, there's 6 of us and 4 are younger. Why am I thinking, is that correct? Yes, 4 of them are younger than me. So people would say, oh, you're like a second mom. I'd be like, oh, and then I had Nyla and I was like, no, I wasn't. I was like, not a second, 4th, or 20th mom. Like, no way. Like, I had responsibility, but it wasn't the same as being a mom. It's just a different, because again, it's like about us, it's the mental and emotional attachment, the exhaustion that comes from that. Like you're always thinking, you're always on, whether they're with you or not. That is all the stuff that plays into it that, they don't know. They're just growing up. Like they're just doing their thing. But you're over here thinking, wait, I got to make sure of this. Oh, wait, should I get her in ballet? But I don't want to overload her, but she's really interested in it. Oh, but she wants to do swimming. Oh, that could, it's like, and that's the kind of surface stuff. But as far as like, what does she think about what that kid said to her about her hair at school the other day? Or this grown lady. Oh my gosh. And half of it is like doing this while you're out with them. Especially, I feel like she literally, everywhere I take her, not like bragging on my child, I do think she's perfect, but everywhere I take her, she's like, people are always commenting on her looks. So they're
she's
always
beautiful.
like, oh, thank you. But they're always, people are always commenting on that. And like a couple years ago, she would get annoyed. And she would say, Mommy, people are always saying, I don't like she just didn't want all the comments. But it was happening. And now, she's starting to understand more. A woman came up to her. We go on these mommy-daughter road trips because I just want to show her everything and I want to go places and I want to take her. And so we went to a little town outside of Santa Barbara, and this woman, this older lady, she's like in her 70s, she came up and she was like, you're just a beautiful little princess, she says to Nyla. And Nyla had a crown on. Nyla looks like she's 10, not in her face, but she's tall. And she's sitting in a restaurant with a baby doll and a bottle feeding the baby doll and a little princess crown. So it's like, and that's another thing I always have to remember is like, she looks older than she is. She's young. and to give her grace based on that too, as far as like not to have expectations that she's not ever gonna like whine for a toy in the store or like,
Yeah.
whatever. But this woman comes up and this woman's like, do you do your Dolly's hair? And Nyla says, yeah. And she said, and your mommy does your hair? And Nyla says, yeah. And she says, oh, that must be hard for your mommy. I wanted to say, can we come get their mothers and grandmothers because they're going to get punched out here? Like, I can't. I literally, I'm like, okay, this is
like
happened.
that.
Like, these comments like on things, it's like, can you stop? And then she doubles down. So I have to like, okay, I don't want to react in a way that my daughter feels marginalized or attacked. I don't want to react because she's young enough that she doesn't quite know that this woman, that was kind of a microaggression. She doesn't really understand that yet. But I also want her to feel good about her hair. And I said, no, it's not hard at all. Like, I love doing it. I said, yeah, I just flipped it like she has beautiful, luscious, thick hair, and she's like, oh yeah. I said, it's not hard at all if you know what you're doing. She says, oh, that's what I hear with that hair, if you know what you're doing. But if you don't, oh my God. She's like doubling down. And I say, well, that's the case with any hair. Because if I put oil in that woman's hair, it's not going to work out well for her. Like, like, and
she just had no idea. She was just,
oh my gosh. And she wanted to relate, is what I could tell. Like, she wanted to connect with me on this or whatever, but it's like these comments. And so, there's comments on beauty, which is, because she's a little girl, which people comment on beautiful little boys too. But societally, it has a different impact on girls because the expectation is that they have to maintain that forever. Like, that seed is being planted that you're beautiful and you better stay this kind of beautiful, like forever. And or if someone doesn't say you're beautiful at some point, like, oh, like what, I don't want her to start needing that at all. But then there's the added thing of, as she grows, what she understands about these microaggressions. So that's a challenge for sure. Like, society, what those things, like trying to kind of like go through the minefield and like block her from these things, but also educate her about them. So I did have to talk to her about that, later, because when that woman walked away, I said, yeah, it's with any hair, if you don't know what you're doing. And she was like, oh yeah. And then she like is gone. And so I asked Nyla the next day, because I was battling with it. Did she know? Like, how much did she understand? And how do I present it? So I asked her, did you understand what that lady was talking about, about hair? And she said, yeah, she was asking, is it hard to do? I said, about the doll or about you? She said, both. And I said, oh, well, I want you to know, I love doing your hair. It's a whole ritual. It's a bonding experience. I sit you down on the floor. I comb your hair. We talk, you read, we watch something. Like, I said, it's a whole, your hair, I said, our hair is an experience, and not everyone gets to or knows how to participate in that experience. And that's fine. It's not for everyone. And I said, and that woman doesn't know, how, but, it's like, I want you to know your hair is amazing and I love doing it. And there's, these are memories we're creating. And then and then she says, but that woman, she had curly hair. she said, so she doesn't know how to do her own hair. Because this woman, she had like, like it was like a little curled, like just a little bit of a wave. And so I was like, yeah, I wonder what that's about. That's kind of wacky. And she's like, maybe her mom still does her hair. And I'm like, yeah, I wonder. She said, or maybe she has someone do her hair, and after her mom used to do it. And I was like, yeah, it could be, I don't know. But yeah, I think she has to like practice, because but so she didn't fully get that her, what the woman was saying fully, but she did enough. And so long story short, or not really short, but basically it's all of these things that you're constantly navigating because we're not raising in a bubble. And those things are definitely challenging, but as they get older, they start to understand those things more. And then you're kind of like giving it piece by piece, like, oh, how much can I give? How much do I share? You know?
And growing with your children. And I think that's just such a beautiful story to kind of wrap us up with as well. I love what you said, you know, you'll hear it and what we do together is an experience. And I think that can be applied to any facet of parenting. This is an experience between you and I, and just that desperate need as a mother to protect and step away and let them grow and then jump in and let them feel it. And I think that it is just a constant. So I have so loved this conversation, Jazz. Do you have anything to add before we wrap up? Like any final words for anybody who's watching later on about growing with your child? You've said so many great things.
I think it's basically, I've been reading, or was reading before, Conscious Parenting, which talks a lot about this, like how, like, I know that I'm best suited to respond as opposed to react when I'm centered, and I'm not always centered, obviously, but like when I'm not, to be able to then call that out to her and say, look, I'm sorry, that's not the way that I wanted to respond or what have you, and to go back and like repair. And to give ourselves space without feeling like we're gonna like ruin everything. I think that that's really important. It's really important to give ourselves grace and give our kids grace. And I feel like we're often more frustrated when we're being hard on ourselves. So that a lot of times the frustration isn't at what the kid isn't doing. It's not only that, it's like, oh man, they won't go to bed, but at my failure, so to speak, as not being able to I thought I was done with this stage of getting them to stay in bed, and that it comes back and it's like, okay, well, it's not a linear process, and like no relationship is linear. There's no destination. There is no like construct of end of the time. It doesn't shut off when they're 18, I assume, from everyone I know who, have older kids. And I don't know if that's a final thought, because there's no finality to anything. It's an ongoing discussion. And I thought just as moms, like we can start to sink into the ever evolving beauty of motherhood and childhood and that growth and how that comes together, without looking at it as black and white, like success or failures or good days or bad days or, things like that, but that we can just really kind of go through the molding of the relationship.
I love that. Thank you so much, Jazz. What a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here and all of your wonderful insights. I feel as though people are going to learn so much from you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
We've got to do this again sometime.
Yeah, for sure.
You're fantastic. I wish I was stopping through LA and I could come and we could drink some wine together, but maybe next time. Maybe next time.
Sounds good.
So until then, I will see you on the internet.
Okay.
Thank you, Cluster. Love you guys. And for anybody who's watching now or later, I hope you learned something from this too. All right.